Well, Kenya's economy grew by 5.4% last year, down from 6.3% in 2018 due to a slowdown in agriculture, manufacturing and the construction sectors. There had been hope when 2020 started that there would be an upward trend in growth. But with COVID-19, the whole world is expected to enter a global recession. Parliament today debated and adopted the Budget Accounts Committee Report 2020-2021, which gives the following estimates. That's what I want to put up on the screen right now. This should give you an idea of the direction in which government is heading. Education will receive the lion's share with about 504 billion Kenya shillings. This will be going to the Teacher Service Commission to hire teachers, university education, TVETs, etc. We can also look at infrastructure there, 189.5 billion shillings. Okay, we're already on to the next graphic. Okay, health. I know many of you are interested in this. 111.7 billion Kenya shillings. It would go to health research and development, national referral and specialized services, amongst other allocations. Water and sanitation, 77.7 billion. Crop development and agriculture research, 41.8 billion. Social protection and senior citizens, about 116, I believe, 0.9 billion Kenya shillings. I want to show you a bit about what estimates we have on tourism and of course, all right, okay, we've gone back. Okay, so we had missed this. Infrastructure, 189.5 billion. Interior security estimates, 131.6 billion. And treasury, 106.9 billion. I've got another slide I want to take you to. I want to show you what's happening in tourism as well. Okay, so tourism at 12.8 billion Kenya shillings, while the estimates for industrialization will be 9.7 billion Kenya shillings. Let's talk a little bit about where some of this money will come from. So the overall budget is estimated at about 2.7 trillion Kenya shillings. In terms of financing, this part of the money will come from foreign debt, estimated at about 349.7 billion Kenya shillings, and local debt estimated at 473.6 billion Kenya shillings, and we'll be discussing the debt as well. And one last highlight is that our debt obligations 2020-2021 is about 904 billion Kenya shillings. Well, we want to get into that discussion now. Honorable Kimani Ichungwah on standby together with Honorable John Mbadi. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being patient. Honorable Ichungwah, let me start with you. I asked you if there was any good news for ordinary Kenyans in the 2020-2021 budget. You said a little bit. Please elaborate.
Yes, Wahiga, I did mention a little bit because it definitely would not be what many of us Kenyans would expect. But there are a number of measures that came with the budget estimates, or rather came after the initial tabling of the budget estimates. It was rather disappointing in the beginning. And you remember me speaking in Parliament immediately after the budget estimates were tabled, and I expressed our disappointment as a committee and as Parliament that the National Treasury and government had not taken cognizance of the realities on the ground at that time. You remember that was at the end of April. COVID was already with us. A lot of people were suffering from floods that were ravaging parts of the country, mudslides, and so many other difficulties that Kenyans were going through. And remember, even before that, the economy still wasn't doing very well. But subsequently, I have to say they did try, because they did table the 8-point agenda that the president spelled out a few weeks ago, the economic stimulus package. And therein is where we can say there's a little bit of mitigation measures that will help in the alleviation of COVID-19 in terms of recruitment of extra healthcare workers, as you've said. There will be a little bit of recruitment of teachers, a little bit of infrastructure support in schools in terms of desks that will be done almost at every constituency, and construction of classrooms, roads. There is a bit of money in water, a bit in healthcare.
Indeed.
There is a Kazi Mtaani program that is coming to help a number of vulnerable youth to get jobs that they will be able to do in their neighborhoods in cleaning the environment and such other manual jobs.
Okay, Honorable
There's also a bit of money, as the President announced, about 300 million shillings almost weekly, covering about 300,000 households for stipends, especially those in slum areas.
And Honorable Ichungwah will be getting a little bit specific shortly on the program, but let me allow Honorable Mbadi to also weigh in on this. Honorable Mbadi, you said there is some good news for Kenyans in that budget, in the estimates that you've seen to some extent. I'd be curious to hear from you to what extent or where is the shortfall, where is the gap, even as you studied that report today and discussed it in Parliament?
Yeah, thank you, Wahiga. First of all, let me put it this way, that, you know, we are preparing this budget at extraordinary times. This is the first time, I think, in the history of this country that we are preparing a budget with a lot of challenges, beginning from the pandemic, the health crisis, to the flood issues, and also the locust invasion. I don't think there is any time in the history of this country that we have faced such number of challenges. Therefore, one expected this budget to be a little focused on, one, to address issues of health crisis. How do we mitigate those health crisis? And then also to look at the issues of flooding and the issues of food security. What Kenyans need at the moment is, one, food on their table, and two, protection of their jobs. So the reason why I said to some extent is that we expected more focus shifted towards those critical areas. However, I would say that after we spoke in Parliament and talked about budget being prepared under business as usual environment and not COVID exposure environment, I want to also agree with the Honorable Kimani Ichungwah that the Treasury went back and the Executive brought amendments or adjustments to the budget, which include, he has mentioned, the Kazi kwa Vijana, which would put money into the pockets of the youth who will be working in urban areas. There is also the labor intensive works, the roads that will be done. A lot of it will be done through local labor. And that would also put money in the pockets of our youth who will be engaged. There is also, if you look at those budget estimates, you'll see an enhanced targeted approach to orphans and vulnerable and other poor individuals who are going to get not the normal 30 billion per year, but about three times, slightly more than 3 times that amount. There is also the issue of provision of finances to help protect jobs. You can see some allocation to the tourism sector through the Tourism Finance Corporation, which will be giving money for renovation of hotels. And I can go on and on, but there is quite a bit of provisions in the budget which would directly intervene in terms of mitigating the effects of the COVID-19.
One of the questions, Honorable Mbadi, that Kenyans might have tonight is, why is the allocation to health paling in comparison to, for example, the allocation to infrastructure, allocation to education, in a year when Kenya's biggest crisis arguably is COVID-19?
Wahiga, yes, I agree with those who are asking that question, that probably we needed to put a little bit more resources to health.
And we'll be putting the health graphics on the screen.
Health is a devolved function.
Go ahead.
Pardon?
I was saying we are putting those graphics on the screen. It should also be
understood.
Go ahead.
Are we together, Wahiga?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just started saying that I agree with those Kenyans who are questioning why resources directed at health does not reflect the kind of crisis we have today. But I also want to point out that we must appreciate that health is a devolved function, and a lot of the finances, the 316 billion that is going to the counties, should be apportioned or directed towards the health sector, so that adding it together with what the national government is giving would go a long way into helping address the health challenges. But you can also not say that education does not require, because if you look at the resources that we are channeling towards education, a lot of it is for recurrent expenditure. And you cannot stop paying teachers, because these are Kenyans. Again, you will affect the economy, because if you are not paying teachers, it means you are not putting money in the hands of Kenyans, and you are reducing the consumer demand capacity. And so I would say that what I expect from the president tomorrow when he meets the Council of Governors, I don't want to hear this tired argument by governors that they have not received the 5 billion. The 316 billion that we give to the counties, the president needs to look at the governors and the Council of Governors on the face and tell them, directly on the face, and tell them that a lot of that money should now be directed towards health issues.
Okay, and yet governors and counties have received less of an allocation in this year's estimates than in previous years. So you're putting it on the counties, but they have less money. And unfortunately, the challenge is that they always complain that the money doesn't even get to them on time.
I don't think that is correct. I don't think counties are getting less money this year. They are getting exactly the same amount they got last year, 316.5 billion. What maybe we can argue on is that that is not sufficient, and I agree that that is not sufficient. Further, it should also be noted that time value of money, the 316 billion last year, is not the same as 316 billion this year. But it should also be understood that it's only the budget for counties that has not been reduced. If you look at the budget of national government in almost all sectors, it has been reduced. So the protection of that budget to the same level it was last year is some step. But it is because we don't have resources, Waiga. I would tell you, if you look at this budget critically, you will see that we are borrowing money to meet recurrent expenditure. The total budget is 2.7 trillion shillings. Out of that, 1.82 goes to recurrent expenditure, and 584 is what goes to development. And then you add to 316. Now, if you take the 182 billion and compare it to the projected revenue, ordinary revenue of 1.6 trillion, it means that recurrent expenditure alone is over and above the ordinary revenue, which is our collection, the significant revenue or domestic revenue.
Okay.
Now, if you add the 316, which is the bulk of it, Waiga, the bulk of the money that goes to counties also goes to recurrent, it is clear that we are borrowing money to meet recurrent expenditure. So we don't have space, fiscal space in our budget.
Okay, and I'll be coming back to talk about debt with you, but let me bring in Honorable Ichungwah to give him a chance to possibly respond to what you've said, but also to look at another allocation, the allocation to industrialization. In a year when many around the world have resolved that local production must thrive with the challenges brought about in the supply chain by COVID-19, we're only allocating about, what, 9.7 billion or so to industrialization. Does that make sense to you, Honorable Ichungwah, at a time when, for example, social protection and senior citizens, which is an important allocation, is getting much more and will not yield the fruit that industrialization would have yielded?
Well, I think one of the things you must appreciate is that, as John Mbadi has told you, we are dealing with a very extraordinary circumstance this financial year and the next financial year. And therefore, ordinarily, you would expect, yes, that would be putting more resources into manufacturing to spur economic growth. However, you may not be able to get to that level of even being able to manufacture and have people to produce if that population is unwell. And therefore, priority now should be towards healthcare and mitigating on the negative effects of COVID-19. You must ensure that you have a healthy population that is able to produce. And thereafter, then we can look at what needs to be done in other spheres. John Mbadi has enumerated for you in terms of figures the dire situation that we are in. And I did mention at the beginning that even before COVID-19, our economy was not doing very well. COVID-19 has come in to further complicate what was already a dire situation. And therefore, something must give in. And we must make a choice whether it is manufacturing to give in or it is the health of our people to give in. And given a choice even for you between your own health and producing for sale, I think you choose first to be healthy. And it's the same at the macroeconomic level. We have a tough choice to make. Do we first mitigate on the healthcare pandemic, the humanitarian crisis that you're talking about? The social protection element of this is to address the humanitarian crisis. And I can tell you it's not enough. The president announced a very modest figure of about 300 million shillings a week. If you give 1,000 shillings for food, that will only cater for 300,000 people. That's just Kibra alone. You've not touched Korogosho, Madare, and the people who are homeless in Kariobangi and elsewhere. And even in our own villages back in Suba South, Suba North, in Kikuyu, there are still vulnerable people who need support, and those are yet to get government support. Therefore, we must balance the social protection, we must balance the health pandemic mitigation, and also get to be able to plan ahead and know beyond this pandemic, how then do we spur our economy to grow again? And government has, as I said in the beginning, has taken a little bit of measures. The credit guarantee scheme, 3 billion shillings going towards an SME credit guarantee scheme, is some of the safeguards to ensure that our economy is stimulated to grow beyond this pandemic. The support to the Tourism Finance Corporation to come and help the hospitality sector is not enough. 3 billion shillings are just a drop in the ocean, considering the number of hotels and tourist destinations we have in this country. But it's a good start. And probably if we are in a better position in terms of our revenue generation, maybe we should have been able to do more. I would have looked probably at a kitty of about 200 billion shillings. And as you said, we may need now to, and I have always insisted this, it is time that we really had a discussion, and a very candid and bold discussion, on our public debt.
Okay. And
how we start renegotiating our public debt. We must take our new CS to account on his promises last year that we increasingly will move away from commercial debt that's more expensive and is holding us back from renegotiating part of our debt. He said that last year. We must now, as Parliament, and I'm sure those of us who are in Parliament, we will do our work in ensuring that he keeps his word, that we will increasingly move away from commercial debt. Because what Mbadi is telling you...
I want to interrupt you, Honorable Ichungwah.
And consider where
hang on there. I wanted to talk about debt a bit later on, but both of you keep taking me there. Before we dive into the debt discussion, because I can see that's where you're headed, I want to play a clip, and I hope both of you will be able to listen to this, from a member of the Budget and Appropriations Committee. This was what some would call a stunning revelation, released in November last year during a meeting that I believe both of you were present in. Let's listen to Honorable Moses Kuria and what he spoke about on matters debt.
I think Jomo and myself are members of the Budget Committee, and personally I have taken that road of admitting that as Parliament we have failed. And mea culpa. As a member of Parliament and as a member of the Budget Committee, we have failed Kenyans. We have failed Kenyans because every year, and I've been a member of that committee since 2014, we have sold to Kenyans this romantic story that all is well. And because we believed in respecting the executive, and most of us are also members of the ruling party, so it is messy. I want to say that I want to say that we have lied to Kenyans, first of all. And second thing is that we have failed in our oversight responsibility. The reason we are in this hole is because as Parliament, we could have said no.
One, he says they have lied to Kenyans, and two, they have failed in oversight responsibility. Honorable Ichungwah, tonight, are Kenyans being lied to?
Let me say, Waihiga, Moses Kuria spoke about his experience in the Budget and Appropriations Committee from 2014. I happened to join the Budget and Appropriations Committee in 2017 as chair. And John Mbadi will tell you, for the time I have shepherded this committee in the last 3 years, and I didn't mention it again this afternoon in Parliament, we have been very bold and forthright.
Okay,
if you go through
but you haven't answered my question.
The supplementary.
Can you promise Kenyans tonight that... let me ask you my question. Can you promise Kenyans tonight that they're not being painted a rosy picture of the economic outlook while the reality on the ground is very different? That's what I want to hear from you as the chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee.
To be honest, a rosy picture has been painted. But you cannot fault Parliament, and I was saying John Mbadi will bear me witness that at least for this committee in this 12th Parliament, we've been very forthright. And you just need to read through our reports and see whether we have not pointed out the issues of public debt, and the risk that we run as a country, whether we have not pointed out the issues of the realism of our revenue estimates, including this year's budget. We are still telling them that the 1.621 trillion might be a little bit too optimistic in a country that is being ravaged by floods and health pandemic that has occasioned thousands of job losses. And therefore, we have been very forthright. Whether the picture has been rosy, I think every other government paints a rosy picture of what it is doing. But for us as members of parliament, we, as the people's representatives and the people charged with the responsibility of holding government to account, I think to a large extent we've been able to do that. We have spoken at length on issues where we feel the Constitution is being misused and abused. We've spoken about the use of Article 223 of the Constitution and how it is being abused. And those are issues that we have pointed out. Therefore, I would not sit here and say that we have failed in our oversight role. Probably, we have failed as Parliament in not being able to follow up on all the resolutions that the House resolves, because resolutions are passed, and maybe we now have a committee on implementation. Maybe they should be able to pick up all our reports and ensure that the National Treasury and the Executive is able to follow through on all House resolutions. Because House resolutions are there pointing out all these issues.
Okay, Honorable Mbadi, Honorable Ichungwah are walking tenderly around the issue of whether Parliament has failed and its duty when it comes to protecting Kenya from the ballooning debt that we now see. He says it's not really Parliament's fault, but some would ask this. Last year, Treasury brought a proposal that passed through your committee before getting to the floor of the House. A proposal to raise the debt ceiling, or Kenya's debt ceiling, to 9 trillion. Your committee read the report, passed it on to the floor of the House, and it was voted in. Some would say that you are as complicit in Kenya's debt as Treasury is.
You know, sometimes, Waiga, let's be forthright here. I think from 2018 to date, there has been a robust debate about the debt level in this country, a debate that we have never seen previously. Regarding the debt ceiling, I think those who are keep on referring to debt ceiling do not understand exactly what debt ceiling means. Debt ceiling is not equal to debt level. Debt level is approved every year, how much country borrows. Debt ceiling is just giving authority to reach some level of debt. And by the way, if you look back to last year, if we did not raise that debt, this economy would just collapse. And so did you want to go the direction of collapsing the economy at that time, or you'd look for ways of allowing the economy to continue and look for ways of restructuring the debts, as the executive mentioned? I think, to me, we chose the route of restructuring, debt restructuring. Let me come out clear on this issue of debt. If you look at the debt pileup from independence to 2013 to 2018 to date, from on June 2013, the total debt level in this country was 1.8 trillion. By 2018, the debt level was 5 trillion. And today it is 6.2 trillion. Now, Waiga, what I'm saying in short is that from independence to 2013, when Jubilee came to power, we had only borrowed up to a maximum of 1.8 trillion. But since Jubilee came to power, from 2013 to 2018, that debt level had increased to 5 trillion. Today it is 6.3 trillion. A lot of mistakes have been committed, Waiga. And I can hear you are saying that, or you are quoting Moses Kuria, that Parliament has failed Kenyans. I would say to some extent, yes. But Waiga, if you look at my contribution in Parliament, from 2014 to date, which year haven't I talked about debt levels? It has been my pet topic, and actually Kimani Shunga has referred to it many times, that Honorable Mbadi's pet topic is the debt level. What I want to say as I conclude, it's that borrowing is not bad, but what is ailing us as a nation today is how did we apply the debts that we borrowed? Waiga, that is why as ODM we are supporting President Uhuru Kenyatta's fight against corruption. Because part of what has brought us to where we are is because the money that we borrowed, and we borrowed from commercial banks. The reason why we borrowed from commercial banks and not concessionary loans is because why we went commercial debt, which Honorable Kimani Ichungwah has referred to, is because the conditionalities of commercial debt is not as stringent as those of concessional loans. But then we were borrowing this money to applying it. Waiga, just let me say this. We borrowed money like Eurobond. You borrow Eurobond and you take it to sweep and streets. That is not wise application of that debt. We borrowed money to do dams that didn't exist. We borrowed money to do railway at inflated cost. Railway is a very good thing. And when I listened to the president on Madaraka Day talking about railway, and it is good to be proud about it. But the problem is there are still question marks on the cost of that railway. When you apply borrowed money to projects that are not able to pay back the loan, then you are not wise. Even at our domestic expenditure level, you cannot borrow money to come and give people to clean your compound. I don't know how many people go to the banks to borrow money to come and give the people to clean their compounds.
Honorable Mbadi.
Because that is not a wise use of borrowed money.
Okay.
So I would say that it's the application of the money that we borrowed and the source of that borrowing is what has put us to where we are.
Honorable Mbadi, what is confusing Kenyans tonight is that you've said last year Parliament had pretty much no choice but to approve Treasury's request to raise the debt ceiling to 9 trillion. But in the same report that you discussed today in Parliament and adopted, you have cited debt as one of the biggest challenges facing Kenya. You've stated that Kenya must look for temporary abandonment of contracting new expensive commercial loans, as well as discussions for debt restructuring with Kenya's largest external creditors. Already, Honorable Ichungwah says he is concerned that the new Treasury CS is going, quote-unquote, contrary to the promises he made. Would you not have sent the executive a strong message last year by rejecting their request to raise the debt ceiling? Would that not have sent a message to the executive that it's not going to be business as usual for Parliament? Honorable Mbadi?
You see, Waiga, the best we are doing today, I don't think the right message was to block the raising of the debt ceiling. What we have been doing and what we are doing today, and Honorable Kimani Ichungwah will confirm that to you, we are engaging the Treasury in getting the details of the borrowings, where they are sourcing for the loans and where it is being applied. For the first time, we are engaging the Treasury in detailed analysis of the debts, the debt composition, and the debt application. That, to me, is the right way to go. And that is why we have discovered that the CS Treasury is not living to his promise to Parliament and to Kenyans in general. But we are holding him to account. Kimani will tell you that this time we even engaged him into even definition of various debts, which he has previously he used just to lump debts and say this is external debt, this is internal debt, domestic debt. This time we are going line by line to ask and to find out what are these, where are they coming from. So I think that is the right way to go. Honorable
Ichungwah, is it too late? Are we already too deep in the hole before even COVID-19 came in?
It's not too late, Wahiga, and as Honorable John Mbadi is telling you. One, when we allowed the opening up of the debt ceiling, we did not say that government can now outrightly go and borrow up to 9 trillion shillings. That debt ceiling was opened up to July or June of the year 2022. And in fact, the initial proposal from the Budget and Appropriations Committee, and also bearing in mind that that decision was not even to come to the Budget and Appropriations Committee, it was to go to the Committee on Delegated Legislation because it was a regulation issue. But we did weigh in, and our initial proposal as a Budget and Appropriations Committee was to limit that figure to 7.5 trillion up to the year 2022. With a reason, because the medium-term framework up to the year 2022 was at about 7.2 trillion. And therefore, government was saying in terms of what we want to do for the next 3 or so years, we would need to borrow up to 7.2 trillion. And we said, let's open it up to about 7.5 trillion. But government did insist on 9 trillion. And we said, well, if it is going, I think it was to go up to the year 2024 at 9 trillion shillings. And therefore, it was allowed. But that did not mean go out and borrow all that money next year or this financial year. What Mbadi is telling you is that indeed it is true. If we didn't open it up, then we would be looking at an economy that would be collapsing. As I said, even before COVID, this economy was not doing well. Our revenues, and what we've always insisted as a committee, the realism of our revenue estimate is still not up to date. We have a choice to either go back and tax Kenyans more, or ensure that we expand our tax bracket and our taxable sources and the people we are taxing to be able to generate more revenues, and their KRA has a lot of work to do. Or be able to generate what we're able to generate here, but also borrow responsibly. And what we borrow responsibly, also utilize it responsibly, and that's what John Mbadi is telling you, that we've insisted as a committee. You will not just go out and borrow and like they did with Eurobond and tell us we spent this in terms of budgetary support. We want to see a list of the projects that you want to fund from borrowed money, so that you don't borrow money to pay salaries and give to be wasted in counties as happens today. Therefore, it's not too late. There is still a lot of work that needs to be done. Parliament has a huge role to play. And that is why I would still insist today that we, as a country, must ensure that Parliament and its committees operate independently of the executive.
Okay. That
there is little interference with the parliamentary committees. There is little interference with decisions of Parliament, and decisions, House resolutions are followed through, to ensure that where we are providing oversight on government, that then becomes a reality. The architecture of our constitution was very good, that we would have an executive that would implement decisions, and the legislature would oversight those decisions. If we find ourselves in a situation where both the legislature and the executive are sleeping on the same bed and none can question the other, then we're in a lot of trouble.
Honorable Ichungwah, someone else who spoke about the state of the economy late last year was the governor of Central Bank, Dr. Njoroge. And this is what he had to say about the country's debt. We are dwelling on this especially because it has a huge impact on the budget that will be read out on Thursday. This is what he had to say.
None of you asked me today about debt, debt issues and things like that. I mean, we cannot, there was a lot of abracadabra. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying by abracadabra. Yeah. There's a lot of that. And we need to do the right thing. Forget the abracadabra. Let's do the heavy lifting.
There was a lot of abracadabra. Very strong statement from a man of his stature. Honorable Ichungwah, I guess many say you can't cry over spilled milk. The debt is already on hand. It's already on site. There might not be much that we can do about it. But what measures are put in place? What have you looked at as a committee to ensure that Kenyans' hard-earned money is ring-fenced and protected in the 2020-2021 budget?
I think a lot of that abracadabra that he's talking about is what happened, for instance, with the SGR loans. You are borrowing to invest in a project that probably the returns will not be forthcoming in the near future, and that project is not able to sustainably pay for itself. And I was a vice chair of the Public Investment
Can I interrupt you there?
Parliament.
I apologize for interrupting you there. So who is to be held responsible for that tonight, Honorable Ichungwah? If you can make a statement as strong as that, who is responsible for that, that a return on investment will not be seen in the near future, and yet that is a promise Kenyans were given?
Why Wahiga mentioned it, and I was going to say, I was the vice chair of the Public Investments Committee in the last parliament, in the 11th parliament. If you read through the recommendations of the PIC report on the SGR project, we were very clear as Parliament, and that's why I'm still emphasizing on the need to respect institutions and decisions of institutions. If the PIC report had been adhered to in 2013, 2014, Wahiga, we would not find ourselves where we are today. But we're in a situation in a country where no institution respects the other. The judiciary is not respected by the executive doesn't respect Parliament does not respect the judiciary doesn't respect Parliament, and therefore we find ourselves in this problem. If there is anyone to blame, it is you, me, and everybody in this country.
Well, I pay my taxes.
And you did ask the
I'm not sure you can blame me.
What is it that we are doing to ensure that we ring fence the budget process this time round, and that we do not get to where we are. And I think John Mbadi had mentioned a bit of those measures. One, to ensure that we scrutinize line by line. If you are going to borrow, we are now asking ourselves, are you borrowing commercially? Are you getting as program loans? Are you getting as concessional loans from multilateral donors, and at what rate? and how are you applying this money that you are borrowing?
Okay.
Is it to specific projects, development projects that you have a return on investment, or is it for recurrent expenditure? And therefore, when we ask ourselves those questions as a country, Wahiga, then we get it right.
Tell me this briefly. I know I need to weigh in also with Honorable John Mbadi, but you can't blame Kenyans. We voted you parliamentarians in to represent us. So I don't think it's fair to say that it is the fault of all Kenyans. It sounds like that's what you said.
Wahiga, it is Kenyans who will tolerate when institutions are being abused. Kenyans will tolerate when parliament is being abused by the executive. Kenyans will tolerate when the judiciary is being disrespected by the executive.
I'm not
Kenyans
sure
will tolerate probably when parliament is also...
I'm not sure many of our viewers will agree with that
parliament
tonight.
Is also disrespectful to any of the other institutions. If we are not tolerable to these issues, Wahiga, and even you in the fourth estate, you just need to ask yourself, how forthright and how bold are you in talking about some of these issues? Because if we did speak about them and inform Kenyans, then Kenyans will speak to their members of parliament. Their members of parliament will be a little bit more bold and forthright when they come to parliament. But if you don't speak about them, if nobody's speaking to the members of parliament, they become complacent, they get into bed with government, and nobody oversights anybody.
Okay. You seem to be blaming everyone else except the institution that you represent tonight, but we'll come back to that a bit later on. Honorable Mbadi...
I have mentioned parliament, Wahiga, remember?
Pardon? Okay, let me bring in Honorable Mbadi as well, who's been waiting patiently. Now, during the first term of Jubilee, Honorable Mbadi, ODM had a lot of concerns about the way the economy was being managed. In fact, in 2016, ODM leader Honorable Raila Odinga said that Jubilee's policies had effectively crippled the economy. Tonight, do you still have those same concerns?
Let me take this trajectory of saying that I think we must understand where we came from. Number one, that we came from closely to a parliamentary system, to a presidential system. So in a presidential system, the budget-making process has largely been moved to parliament as opposed to a parliamentary system. Hello, Waiga?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Waiga, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Yeah, there are some funny sounds. I was saying, in a pure presidential system, budget-making process is largely, the function of budget-making process is moved to parliament. And I think we have taken time to understand and appreciate that. Waiga, there's a bit of some noise. Someone needs to work on that gadget.
We will work on you, but we will work on it, but we can hear you.
But can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we can. Go ahead.
You can hear me. Let me just go on then. In answering your question, I think it took us time as a parliament to appreciate and understand our role in budget-making process. You will appreciate that from last year, largely from 2018, Waiga, there has been a shift in the attention that we give to the budget process. You can see, like this year, for the first time, we even refused to start discussing the budget estimates as a committee because already we had seen that the executive did not do enough in realigning the budget to the present situation. And we had to call the budget, the cabinet secretary responsible for finance and responsible for treasury to meet with us, and we agreed on what needs to be done. And that is what gave rise to the economic stimulus package. Now, this is the only time in the history of Parliament that the budget committee report has taken time to be tabled because we had not agreed with the executive, because members of the budget committee had issues to raise. So I think this is the way to go, to be more keen in terms of addressing and analyzing the budget. So that is the trajectory that I think we need to take. But answering your question regarding our concerns are on record, Wahiga.
Are they on record today?
About it in 2014, 2015, 2016. It is still on record. If you even go to my contribution on the floor of the House today, what did I say? I talked about our economy. I talked about, as the leader of minority in the National Assembly, I spoke about the public debt. I even called for a national day of national dialogue day to discuss the public debt. How else would you expect ODM to speak louder than that. I am the leader of ODM in the National Assembly where a budget is being discussed, and I spoke. And you know, when I spoke, the party leader of ODM spoke because I represent him in the House. So I really don't know this, what you expect the ODM to say much more than that. So but you can also see, Waiga, even when we opened up the debt ceiling to 9 trillion, last year when we were opening the debt ceiling to 9 trillion, the budget, the debt ceiling, the debt level at that time was already about 5.9 trillion. Today it is 6.2 trillion. So the increase is not as wide. It's only that we had already found ourselves into a situation where the debt level is high. If we continue at this rate, we have 2 more years to hit 2022. You will find we may be, in 2022, we may be still at 7.2. The alarm that we are sounding today is that let us not relax. Let us not relapse into more debts. Okay. I know we have challenges which now may complicate matters for us, but if we continue at this level of borrowing that has taken place in 1 year or so and continued the same way, we may not complicate the problems or make the problems worse. Okay. So that is what we are saying. But I would say that it would be wrong to say that Parliament is now doing much. We are doing a lot. It may not be enough, but we are doing a lot. Okay, you're doing a lot, but it may not be enough. And maybe that's where Kenyans would still have more questions. And I'll be reading some of the feedback that we have from some of our viewers. Let's start with Twitter. This is what some are saying tonight about the discussion. Remember, the hashtag is Newsnight. I'll read them for you, gentlemen. I know you can't see them from where you are. All right, Gibson Amenya is saying, Newsnight, I hope, and it's his expectation that the CS will address the issue of Eurobond, how it has blocked Kenya from seeking a suspension on repaying of foreign debts due to COVID-19. Was the Eurobond prospectus scrutinized for the same? Okay, let's take a look at another tweet here. This one coming in from James Nyawera 3. What is happening to the health budget? While government of Kenya has been unable to meet the Abuja declaration of 15% budgetary allocation to health, how on earth are we slashing allocation to such a critical sector? Has the pandemic not taught us the essence of taking health seriously? All right, let's take a look at another one. Joshua Waihura says, today I will join the discussion to hear how the government is planning and budgeting to do development within the 47 counties which we have in Kenya. I want to hear from government about being ready in action practically to resettle all people in Kenya, possibly those who are evicted in the recent evictions that happened. Ahmed Said is saying, how does investment in roads, SGR, dams, other capital projects help to restore the impact of COVID-19? The right projections of revenue applied accordingly where it is needed will kickstart the economy. And I think we have one more. Okay, this one is V. Mutisia. How will the domestic borrowing targets be met given the economic adversity caused by COVID-19? Okay, Honorable Ichungwah, let me start with you. You've seen some of the questions there. A question about Eurobond and whether it has blocked Kenya's ability to receive debt relief. A question about health. 15% was the target according to the Abuja declaration of our budget. We are not anywhere near that. And someone asking about how we'll meet our borrowing targets with COVID-19 and the economic adversity. I don't know which of those questions you want to tackle.
I think the one on Eurobond, his suspicion is as good as my suspicion. Nobody is saying it, but it could be the case. It's just my suspicion that it could be the case, that the commercial loans are interfering with our ability to renegotiate some of these debts.
And this is not a question. This is not a question
of infrastructure development.
Hang on. This is not a question you have sought clarification from Treasury CS, or it has not been of concern to your committee at this time?
It has been a concern. We did ask the question, and the answer that was forthcoming was not very forthright. And he'll be clarifying it before the committee, some of the pending issues that we still have with the CS. Okay. And, well, at times we'll be told there are still negotiations. Therefore, we also give them time to be able to conclude their negotiations. We do not want to be seen to be interfering with whatever negotiations they are in. Therefore, I do hope that the committee and Parliament will be able to follow up on that even beyond this budget process, because it's something that's ongoing. It's not a new, something that's like an event. On the question of money going into infrastructure projects, I think the economic stimulus package, the 8-point economic stimulus package, it has issues to do with mitigation, and it also has issues to do with the post-COVID economic recovery. And some of those measures go towards post-COVID economic recovery, and also ensuring that we have money going into people's pockets. And that's why you hear a lot of the infrastructure going to, at least to the sub-county level, a bit of it going into manual work that will be done, that will ensure that money really trickles down to the people's pockets.
Okay, and let me also bring in Honorable Mbadi. One of the questions that our viewers is asking tonight, even as you respond to what Honorable Ichungwah has said, is we are talking a lot about the debt and where we have come from, but nobody is talking about how to cut government expenditure. I'd like you to weigh in on that, Honorable Mbadi.
Let me start with the issue of Eurobond. I'm very clear in my mind, and our party is very clear about Eurobond. It's something that we opposed from day one. We are still not, it is something that we still don't like. We can lump it together with the general policy of government on borrowing, which is commercial borrowing. And let us not beat about the bush. The main reason why the government of Kenya is not ready to enter into negotiation of debts is because we don't want to lower our credit rating, and that is basically to target commercial borrowing. It is unfortunate, and I think it is something that we have spoken clearly about, and we still want to tell the Treasury that that is not the right way to go. Commercial borrowing is not the right way for our country. We need to focus more on concessional borrowing and renegotiate the debts. Now, on the issue of infrastructure, you know, let me also add onto what Honorable Kimani Ichungwah said. Some of the infrastructure development projects that are going to be implemented in various regions of this country will be through labor-based methods, which is an economic stimulus program, because people will get money direct into their pockets. Secondly, those who are saying that infrastructure would not help in combating or mitigating COVID, I think these are people who are coming from areas where roads are very good. If you come to places where roads are very bad, like in our place, which is probably seeing tarmac for the first time in my constituency, then you would understand what we are talking about. These Kenyans who are suffering need to reach marketplaces and sell their goods and make money to come and help themselves. They need infrastructure. So to me, I tend to disagree that infrastructure in totality is not good for our economy at this time. Maybe there are some big infrastructure projects that we can put aside, but there are road improvement and such like infrastructure is important. It's desirable. It is helpful for this economy. Okay. Now, your last question, can you just remind me, Wahiga, of your last question?
I think you are also to respond to the questions on allocation of money to health as per the tweet.
Yes. Yes. On the issue of health, yes, I'm saying it is not just health alone. There are various declarations that we have entered into, including on education matters and many other issues. But I think health is very critical. And I think as a country, yes, we need to put more money on health. But what we are also failing to do is to come up with the total health budget for the whole country. You know, we are just looking at the national budget for health, which should be quite insignificant. The bulk of the budget for health should be in the counties. So we have not calculated county by county, 47 of them, to bring to the total how much is being spent on health as a sector. Probably if we calculated all that, we might find we are not very far off from the 15% or thereabout. But I still think there is need to invest more in health infrastructure. We still need to equip our hospitals. One of the reasons why President Uhuru Kenyatta was reluctant in opening completely our economy is because our health sector is still facing challenges. If we had hospitals with equipped beds, with equipment, and we have health personnel, we had enough frontline workers, health workers, then I think we could have even opened our economy. So it is a reality we are coming to the realization that our health sector still needs more investment. But we should target more the counties. We should ask the counties, instead of wasting resources on certain unimportant functions, then we need to redirect resources more to the health sector. And especially at this time. And that is why I started by saying that I expect that when the president meets with the Council of Governors or the summit, I think it is an extraordinary summit meeting tomorrow. I am appealing to the president to look at them direct on the face and ask them how much they have allocated from their 316 billion to help equip, help build, help give beds to our hospitals, enough beds. We don't want to hear of these stories of a county having only 10 beds and already 9 are taken up, yet we allocate resources to the county. There is no justification. You cannot tell me that that is because of lack of resources. How come there is lack of resources in that county and there are resources in other counties which have already procured over 300 beds and have put enough facilities? Look at what was happening in Machakos. Quick thinking. Someone has already identified football pitch and has put has made makeshift hospitals to take care of COVID cases. So I think we now need CEOs of our counties, people who are quick in thinking and quick in realigning the budget to priority areas. That is what we need. There are things that can be avoided now. If someone wanted to build a county office, that should stop. Redirect those resources to, if you wanted to open new roads which were not existing in the first place, stop it and redirect resources to the health sector. That is what now I think we need as a country.
Honorable Mbadi and Honorable Ichungwah, both of you at pains to explain what you are doing as Parliament to, of course, alleviate the suffering and the challenges that Kenyans face in 2020. Let me give you a sneak peek of what Kenyans are experiencing at this time. According to a report from the Central Bank of Kenya, the proportion of defaulted bank loans has hit a 13-year high. The last time we had these numbers was in August 2007, the year of an election, and of course, post-election violence after that. That is the challenge of Kenyans tonight. They are listening to each of you, of course, taking note of what you are stating in terms of measures, but for a lot of them, the challenges of rising cost of food and inability to pay rent, and for many right now, defaulted bank loans is a very real concern for them tonight. Is there anything in that budget, Honorable Ichungwah, that offers them hope?
Wahiga, I'll take you back to the COVID response initiative that was announced by the president early this year. And I'm on record in Parliament saying that probably some of those measures will be counterproductive to our economy. And with time, I think I'll be vindicated. I did mention that when you reduce VAT from 16 to 14% and you lose about 50 billion shillings in a quarter, you would rather use that 50 billion shillings that you are losing this quarter to provide food to those households that don't have food, to ensure that those who are losing their jobs have some means of livelihood. And we pointed out those things, Wahiga. On the question of reducing our CBR and the cash reserve ratios on Wahiga, I did mention that it would be better off if we were to force through our monetary policy, we were to force our banking sector to give loan moratoriums on interest for at least a period of 3 to 6 months. That then you would ensure that people are able to repay their loans in terms of the principal and forgo a bit of the interest. But I think the challenge we have, Wahiga, is that many of our policymakers, both in government and even in the private sector, are also part of the bank owners. And therefore, we are conflicted. And I think the day we stand up and call out things as they are, and that is the only challenge I would have with my colleague, Honorable John Mbadi, that the moment this country lost an opposition, because the opposition went into bed with government, then that also became another problem. Therefore, we must be able to have a situation where policymakers divorce their personal interests in business from the decisions that we make as policymakers. We cannot continue having an economy where banks are making billions and sacrificing nothing when Kenyans in the hospitality industry, those in the transport industry are losing jobs and other industries in this country, where people are going without food, but banks continue to make billions. Why couldn't they sacrifice their interest income for 3 months or 6 months, half of this year? Those who made 20 billion shillings in terms of profits last year will still make their 10 billion shillings. But allow this economy to continue growing.
Honorable Ichungwah, are you being fair to Honorable Mbadi, bearing in mind you have been in the ruling party, you have had direct access to the president, you could easily have walked to Treasury. Why blame the opposition when you would have been even closer to those who make these decisions? Is that fair?
I'll be fair.
No, is that fair?
John Mbadi, and it is very fair because one, Wahiga, John Mbadi and myself have a responsibility and a constitutional mandate to oversight government. It may not be true that I have direct access to the president, that you and me know the truth.
No, but you
I have had direct access with the National Treasury, and these are not issues that we have not pointed out. And I have to give John Mbadi credit where it's due. As he said, even in the committee, I tell him the issue of debt is his pet subject. And therefore, we must be forthright as leaders. We must be forthright in our respective mandates. When I am working as a member of parliament on government side, to an extent, I am limited. When you are working on the minority side, you have a responsibility to ensure that you push government to deliver. Not to sabotage government work, but to push government to deliver. And therefore, I said it's regrettable that probably in this kind of situation, and I heard the minority whip, Honorable Junet, say today that he's a bit measured nowadays in what he says. But if we to really do, and maybe that's what Moses Kuria was saying, to an extent we might have failed Kenyans, all of us.
Let me allow Honorable Mbadi, who's really been laughing or something has caught his attention as you've spoken, to respond. Honorable Mbadi, you've been accused of being in bed with government, lost your part of your oversight power that you came with.
You know, Honorable Kimani Ichungwah is my friend. He's such a serious brain. I respect him. But you know, he has just been de-whipped. You know, I think now Tanga can take up that responsibility very easily and execute it as opposition. But how I wish, Wahiga, that Kimani Ichungwah spoke like this around 2014, 2015, 2016. Remember that time as CORD, Wahiga, we really piled a lot of pressure on the executive not to borrow too much, not to put this country into the situation we are in today. But no one listened to us. In fact, there was tyranny of numbers, you remember, Wahiga. We kept on losing the vote. We could speak very eloquently on the floor of the House, but we were losing the vote. And that is why the debt level reached the level it has reached. If we had the numbers, probably, and maybe we would have not been minority, the debt level would have been a little lower. But still, as minority, I don't think we are as Kimani Ichungwah is putting it, that we are mute. We are not. When it is necessary, we speak. The only difference now is that we speak more in a more friendly environment with the Jubilee side. In fact, sometimes they listen, a lot of times the leadership now listen to us, which used not to happen in the last dispensation. Right now, we can make comments which are factored in. Remember, even when we passed the VAT on fuel, initially it was it was going to 16%, but because of the negotiation, it came back to 8%. It came down to 8%. And I can mention so many other things that we have been able to engage with the Jubilee government on. But when it is necessary, remember there was just the other day when Junet and I spoke very strongly on the floor of the House, and people started reading, is a handshake breaking or what? But we were just representing our people. We spoke about the budget estimate, the inadequacy of resources allocated for COVID-19, the inadequacy of resources being applied to flood mitigation, and many others. And you can see out of that, I'm happy that the people of Nyandu and Muhoroni and those regions of Nyanza, we are likely now to have Soin Dam, which has been advertised. Something that has been talked talked about for years, and the Nyando area is going to receive 100 million for the dikes. Not enough, but that's a good starting point. And Tana River is going to get another 100 million for the dikes. So what I'm saying is, as minority, we speak, but the environment is different. Now we are not being treated as enemies. Kimani Ichungwah would not see me when I speak on the floor of the House. It would not be seen as someone who is just an adversary of the government. I am being seen now as someone who is adding value. I can be invited by the CS Treasury to discuss a budget estimate together with Duale, together with Kimani Ichungwah. That used not to happen. I don't know whether that is where Kimani Ichungwah want to push me back to. But my view is that Kimani Ichungwah, things change at times. And let's work together to better the lives of our people. But if you want that kind of combative opposition, I would advise that Kimani Ichungwah is very able to take it up. He's very eloquent, by the way. And as the chairman of Tanga Tanga, I think now that job I can surrender to him of being very combative.
Honorable Mbadi, before I allow Honorable Ichungwah to respond, there are concerns from some Kenyans tonight, and we are getting some of those messages, that because you have taken a more friendly approach to government, that the oversight has decreased. How would you respond to that tonight? That ever since the handshake happened, that we have seen less and less of the vigorous nature of oversight that ODM used to present in the past?
No, far from it. Waiga, let's just be honest with ourselves and realistic. Look at post-handshake and pre-handshake. When did we have many cases of corruption in this country coming up almost on a daily basis? It was pre-handshake. And since we gave the DCI, the DPP, EACC more vigor to fight this corruption, at least people are looking over their shoulders. Unlike previously when it had become the norm. In fact, people had started celebrating theft in this country, and then the impunity had reached the highest level. But with the arrest of even a cabinet secretary in charge of finance and the prosecution, I think somehow we must accept, although we have not reached where we are heading to, but to me, I think now people, even those who are still stealing today, they are a little bit more careful. We cannot relax that everything is perfect. We still need to push. But I don't think it is accurate to say that oversight has been compromised so much. The only difference is that we used to address the media a lot and talk about these things like we are outsiders. Right now, we can talk like insiders. We can talk to the executive through parliament. We can even talk to them in the offices. I have just told you that we had about 6 meetings, and Kimani Ichungwah can confirm to you, and the Treasury, where I was also present. Some we were holding in Parliament with the CS Treasury, discussing this budget. That used not to happen. And no one would invite John Mbadi, the leader of minority. So I can give my input at that level. My party leader can now take a phone call and call the head of state, and they can sit and agree on certain matters. That is what has changed. Okay. It is not that we have changed completely. We are now not alive to challenges facing Kenyans. We are alive to challenges facing Kenyans, and we are addressing them in a different format. That is what I wanted to.
It's interesting that you've raised that issue, and I want to also bring in Honorable Ichungwah shortly because I've got some SMSs and then we wrap this up. You said your party leader can now pick the phone and call the president directly. Has he received closure on queries that he had during the first term of Jubilee? Your party leader, Honorable Odinga, was very concerned about Eurobond, for example. Is he now, has he been satisfied about where the money went to, for example?
You know, Waiga, the issue of Eurobond and where the money went. And
I'm using that as an example because you say he now has access.
I'm not speaking for Raila Odinga, but I know it has not satisfied anybody, including Waiga. I don't know whether you're forgetting, but you will recall that when Parliament asked the Cabinet Secretary for Finance, the Henry Rotich, to bring details of where the money was applied, He only brought ministries which received the money. He did not bring the list of projects. He said the ministries cannot compile because they mixed the Eurobond with other revenue, and so it was difficult to ascertain where the money went to. And in fact, we told him that it means that if the money came, then you applied it even in paying salaries, and he could not answer. So this is a question that is outstanding. The Auditor General did not conclude the work, and I know my party leader. But you know, you cannot talk about the same thing every day. I think we have said what we could say. It is for Kenyans now to judge. But Eurobond money, even if it came, it was not properly utilized. And everybody agrees to that. I think even the president himself, quietly where he is and privately, I think he would admit that that money was not properly applied.
Okay. Even as we wrap up this discussion, let me read a bit of the feedback that Kenyans have tonight. Mungai Gaturi is saying, so the MPs, and I trust both of you can hear me, had to wait until 2020 to start scrutinizing those loans. They were just passing them without interrogating them. Why is Parliament not doing enough? So that's a concern from one viewer. Isinga Brian is asking, kindly ask Ichungwah not to drag Kenyans into the mess they have put us in. If the executive cannot respect legislature, how is that a common Kenyan's fault? Their constant politicking and chest thumping is what is choking this country. And also our SMS line, remember it's 22422. Let me see if I can pull one or two. Okay, the system seems to have failed me. And the hashtag is Newsnight. Soko Anali is saying, I agree with Kimani Ichungwah when he says tolerance to bad leadership is to blame for the change in situation. And let me see if I can read one or two more. Fred Osiro saying, regrettable that 2 years before, the same guys used to laugh about these allegations, asked about debt. This should be evidence enough that leaders will always protect their interests. And that's a concern from Fred Osiro. And one last viewer saying, in the next 10 years, when these two leaders look back over their legacy, what will they say they were most proud of? And what will they say they left the seats that they hold most concerned about? And that's how we can wrap up this discussion. Let me give you each a chance to give your final thoughts, Honorable Ichungwah and Honorable Mbadi, even as you respond to that last viewer who says, when you look back over your reign, either in the Budget and Appropriations Committee, and for you, Honorable Ichungwah, we are yet unsure whether to call you outgoing, current, because there have been hints that you might be on your way out. If you are, what are you proudest of, and what are you most disappointed of as well?
First, I'm not sure whether John Mbadi was offering me his position as leader of minority when he said, now that I am being de-whipped, I can take up some role. But I think we also being dishonest when we say that oversight, our oversight role has not been whittled down by the new corporation. And I'm not saying that corporation is bad. You may also want to disagree with the point that corruption cases have gone down. I think corruption cases are more hidden now. Corruption cases are being sanitized more now. And you know what to do and what to say. If you are corrupt, for instance, if you're a governor, you know what to do and you know what to say, not to be prosecuted and people to go slow on you. Two, you have a country today where almost a year now, we have no Auditor General reporting on government accounts. The auditor term of Edward Ouko expired, I think, in August of last year. Up to date, we are yet to get an Auditor General. Therefore, there are issues that we need to be forthright about and just be bold enough to speak them as they are. And I think that I will do. In terms of my legacy, Wahiga, I am outgoing chairman, and I am very grateful to the Kenyan people. And I did mention it in Parliament this afternoon, and that I walk out as chair of Budget and Appropriations Committee over the last 3 years. I walk out with my head high, confident that I have done the best to serve my country, and grateful to the people of Kikuyu who gave me an opportunity and sacrificed their time and the resource in me to be able to serve other Kenyans in this position. Grateful to the members of Parliament, like my colleague and friend John Mbadi and the other 26 members that I served with in the Budget and Appropriations Committee. And happy that we have been able to, as a committee in the last 3 years, to be forthright, to be bold, to call it out as it is. When we felt that government was being unrealistic in terms of its the realism of the revenue estimates, we pointed it out. When we felt that our public debt was not being well managed, when we felt there are things that were not clear, we did call them out. Our House resolutions and our reports will bear us witness and vindicate us with time. And I do pray, and I did commit this, that I am still in public service. I'll continue to support the incoming chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee and the other members in all other committees to ensure that we have meaningful oversight. I am happy, for instance, Wahiga, and that is part of my legacy, when I spoke this afternoon in Parliament and spoke about the abuse of Article 223 of the Constitution. I am happy to be on record that in 2017-2018 financial year, when the Ruaraka land scandal happened, it is me who moved the amendment to disapprove the payment as much as it had already been done. And it was a debate on whether we are Morticians looking at things that have already been done. But out of the decline or disapproval of that payment, then issues came up and people were able to interrogate whether really there was loss of public funds. As to whether other institutions in government have taken action on the Ruaraka land scandal, that is a debate for another day, and Kenyans will see over time. But I'm very proud of the committee and what we have been able to do in the last 3 years.
Yes. Is there anything you're disappointed about tonight as we wrap this up? That you wanted to achieve or that went wrong under your reign?
I must say I would have hoped that with time, we would get to a position where we're able to meaningfully engage with the executive to ensure that, for instance, when we talk about fiscal consolidation, it is real fiscal consolidation. When we talk about realism of revenue estimates, it becomes realistic that we will do budgets that are more realistic, that are more reflective of our realities as a country in terms of what we are able to generate in terms of revenues, and be able to spend what we are able to generate. When we talk about public debt, that we are able to manage our public debt and we are forthright with each other between ourselves and the executive to ensure that we are borrowing money that we are able to borrow, we are able to repay, and money that is going to in public investments that will generate value for money for the Kenyan people and be able to repay for themselves over time. Regrettable also that many House resolutions, especially those that we have passed as a House from our reports as a Budget and Appropriations Committee, have not been acted on by the executive. And I hope we will be more forthright as Parliament and as a people. When I talk about people, I'm going to ask that question. Leaders, people get the leaders they deserve, Wahiga.
We are out of time.
Forthright with the people. We are out of time. If the people of Kikuyu elect me and expect me to oversight government, they must be able to hold me to account when I fail to oversight government.
Honorable Ichungwah, one last word for you, please, in 30 seconds. One word of advice for your successor, the next chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee. One word, please.
I think I'll just ask him to be measured, appreciate that him or her, him or her be measured in terms of being careful what you do, careful in terms of being able to strike a balance between our needs and the resources available, be able to consult and engage, and the Honorable John Mbadi will tell you part of the reason I gained a lot of confidence with all members of Parliament, not just those who sit with me in the Budget and Appropriations Committee, but in the House generally, is because I was able to engage and consult with all across the board without regard to what political party you come from. I engage with John Mbadi not just as leader of minority, but also as a colleague in the profession, as an accountant, as a well-schooled and intelligent person that we could share ideas to improve the livelihoods of our people. And I want to encourage whoever will take over from me to be able to engage openly. I have offered myself. I am there. I am available. I will be able to work with whoever is there for the best interest of the Kenyan people.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Ichungwah. Honorable Mbadi, let me give you the last word on this as we wrap this up. You had some of the concerns of Kenyans on social media via the hashtag Newsnight, and one about in the next 5 to 10 years, when you look back over your time at the Budget and Appropriations Committee, what are you or what will you have been proudest of, and what will you have been most disappointed of as you wrap this up? Honorable Mbadi.
Thank you, Wahiga. I want to thank Kimani for those kind words. But let me just be very clear on this. I think I would be very proud of, one, the Budget Committee as it is today, as it is known today. The first Budget Committee was in the 10th Parliament. I have been sitting in the Budget Committee from the time the Budget and Appropriations Committee was born. And I must say that I've really helped in strengthening and making it strong. I remember when the executive wanted to water down the powers and responsibility of the Budget Committee in 10th Parliament, I raised the concern that you cannot disperse resources unless and until budget is passed and the appropriation bill is passed. Was overruled by the Speaker then, Honorable Kwethuro was acting Speaker, and this matter was thankfully taken by a Kenyan, and it was taken to court, and I was vindicated, and that has shaped the budget process as we know it today, and I'm very proud of that. I'm also equally proud that during when I was in the 10th Parliament, and I keep on referring to 10th Parliament because it was a more balanced Parliament than 11th Parliament, that in the 10th Parliament, again, when the revenue collection, there was inconsistencies at the Treasury. I raised that matter in Parliament, and it caused a lot of national uproar. I remember the Finance Minister then, who is the President today, could not address the issues of inconsistency, and he came and owned up in Parliament following my question that there were issues, and that since that time we have not had again inconsistencies between the money collected by KRA, what is in the central bank, and what is reported by the secretary in charge of finance, the Treasury. So I would be proud of those things. I would also be proud that in the last Parliament, being a member of CORD, we spoke very strongly about the challenges that we are facing today. Unfortunately, my friend Kimani Ichungwah was in a team that was really proud of the tyranny of numbers, which has put us to where we are. What I regret is that how I wish that Parliament sometimes acts as an institution so that we don't take these party lines when it comes to budget scrutiny, so that we may interrogate the budget with objectivity that is desired. I want to just conclude by saying that I wish Honorable Kimani Ichungwah well. He has done well as the chair of the Budget Committee. And my advice to the incoming chair is that what Kimani Ichungwah has talked about is very important, about consultation. One thing that I must give credit to Kimani Ichungwah for is the issue of consultation.
And please, briefly,
he was very consultative, I think more than any other chair that we have had of the Budget and Appropriations Committee. I expect and I hope that we are going to have another chair who is going to be consultative enough. My other regret is that, yes, as a House, we were not strong enough to stop the executive from borrowing unnecessarily and applying the same borrowed money in a manner that was not very productive to this economy.
Okay. Honorable Mbadi, thank you so much for your time tonight. I must say, one of the most sober conversations we've had with the two of you on this program. Thank you so much. That was, of course, Honorable John Mbadi. He's a member of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, minority leader in the National Assembly as well. Together with the chair, outgoing chair, he's declared it himself very publicly, of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, Honorable Kimani Ichungwah, who is also the MP for Kikuyu. To both of you, gents, thank you for your time and your feedback here. And now I'm going to read the SMSs. This is what Kenyans are saying tonight. I agree with what Mbadi is saying. What Kenyans want, mega projects, not helpful for Kenyans who are sleeping hungry and living jobless. While a second one, someone here says, I foresee Honorable Ichungwah and Honorable Mbadi forming a strong opposition. Bravo, gentlemen. Keep up the spirit. And one person here wanted the two MPs to comment on austerity measures to be taken given the dicey times that the budget will be applied. And we did weigh in on a little bit of that on the program. Gents, once again, thank you. That's where we wrap up the show. Thank you so much for everyone who has tuned in. This has been Newsnight. And on behalf of the whole team that's made this program possible, thank you so much for your time. Our sign language interpreter tonight has been Wilson Mushora. My name is Wahiga Mwaura. Have a good night.